is sizzling hot on the trade market, right? Darren Dreger from TSN joining us once again. It seems all quiet. Before we got going here, Jeff was just whispering to me, I don't think this roster freeze thing's doing anything to push the files. Is that true?
Yeah.
It's not doing anything?
No, it's not entirely true. I mean, it certainly spiced up the conversations, right? But does conversation and trade negotiation actually equate to a meaningful deal? And that's what we don't know. I do think that we are going to see some activity here in the next couple of days. I mean, does it start with a big fish that is Artemi Panarin, the New York Rangers? That's just an odd scenario all the way around. There's no doubt that there are teams that are in the market and trying to get stuff done, but then you have to look at it from a selling perspective. And Vancouver fits into that conversation. If there was a partner or a deal that made sense, you would make that deal. You're not waiting or thinking that, okay, well, February 4th, somebody's going to come in under the wire before the Olympic freeze and meet our premium return. No, probably not, unless you've got an injury, right? Unless there's something that you've had on the back burner that you feel like if you don't jump now, you're really going to get sucked into that vacuum post-Olympics leading up to March 6th. So I do think that we are going to see some things in the next day or two, but unless something dramatic changes here, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of big pieces in play beyond the obvious in Panarin.
The Canucks perspective, they've got a pretty warming forward here in Jake DeBrusk, if he's still being dangled at all, and an ice-cold Connor Garland who maintains he's doing the little things but not getting the results. Do you think either of those two guys is still a possibility here for the Vancouver Canucks? Maybe not before the roster freeze, but before the deadline.
Yeah, possibility, I think, is fair. I think that's an accurate way to describe it. I don't think that Patrick Galvin is closing off conversations on any player, to be fair. How can you? How creative is Vancouver willing to get? Again, those are conversations that probably elevate closer to March 6th. Connor Garland is interesting for me. He is, because, he's gone through a dry spell here of late. But I think there are a number of teams that look at him as an intriguing possibility and a piece that could help them, right? But again, we're in that place, and it's relatively new for most general managers. They knew that the February 4th trade deadline or roster freeze, was coming in advance of the trade deadline. But is it really a high pressure point? And that's kind of what we just talked about. And I also think that, if I'm a buying team, I'm looking, I know what Vancouver has had in play for weeks, literally for weeks. I'm more interested in waiting around to see if there's another piece that pops that maybe I haven't talked about or, I didn't think was going to be available. Now, all of a sudden, that player is available. But DeBrusk, I haven't heard his name out there, a lot of late, but Connor Garland's name definitely is a name that other clubs have mentioned.
I think it's important, too, and I think a lot of people kind of understand it, but we look at Connor Garland, and he's playing with Elias Pettersson the other night on the top line of the Vancouver Canucks. Acquiring teams aren't looking at Connor Garland much as they weren't looking at Kiefer Sherwood, who was the Canucks' leading goal scorer. They're not expecting those guys to come in and be top-end guys. No. They want to be pieces that can help a good team already and slot a guy like Garland probably where he should be on a third line where he can help drive play.
Yeah, I think that's bang on. But again, when you're going through your pro scouting meetings, and most clubs are through that process now, they literally sit in boardrooms and hotels, and sometimes it's in their home city, and they've got whiteboards all over the place. All right, here are the players that we know are in play. Here are the players that we hope are going to be in play. And here's a list of pie-in-the-sky stuff. And then you've got another series of whiteboards that illustrates what you're willing to throw into an equation conversation or into a trade transaction, right? And I've always given Jim Rutherford credit because he gets a lot of his heavy lifting work done early. Billy Guerin learned from him in Pittsburgh. He does the same thing with the Minnesota Wild. And more often than not, we see teams do it every single year around the trade deadline. You overpay, right? You get into a situation where the deadline is looming. You're getting pressure from above because the owner thinks that you're farther ahead than maybe you are in reality. And so you go, okay, well, that defenseman isn't exactly what we want. He's a left shot. He's not a right shot, but that's the best of what's available. So let's overpay and acquire that player. I just, in having the conversation, J-Pat, you're right. I mean, Connor Garland makes a lot of teams better, right? He does, based on the way he plays and when he's, he's producing, he's contributing. He's an all-around good piece. But are you comparing him to who, right? And that's what the clubs who are buyers right now are still waiting for.
Hey, Dregs, the Canucks are in Utah tonight. I want to ask you about the Mammoth because we know that, they made the splash last year in Salt Lake City. I thought they might be aggressive and try and bring playoff hockey to Salt Lake in their first year. It didn't happen. They have fallen just below the playoff bar in the West. Now, they're not going to catch any of those three teams above them in the Central, so they really are looking at a wild card spot. An owner that's got oodles of cash, team that is playing reasonably well, and the Canucks they'll see them tonight. But you hearing anything out of Utah and what they might do to try to solidify a playoff spot?
Yeah, there's an appetite there by Billy Armstrong to bolster what they have up front, right? Add some scoring punch if they can bring that in. Everything you said is bang on here. You've got an owner that, isn't necessarily heavily involved in the hockey operations sense of things, but of course he can envision what a playoff atmosphere would look like in Utah, and he would want that as much as anybody. So when we think of the teams that are at the forefront of trade activity, Utah and Seattle don't necessarily come to mind as big buyers, but that's not to say that they're not active and heavily involved. And I think both are. There's been some, just to shift over to Seattle for a moment here, because of the name dropping that has been reported on. There's been a buzz around Shane Wright. Well, we look at Seattle. There's a team that actually has some pieces up the middle of the ice. They've got some center, Shane Wright, that they're willing to talk to clubs on, but they need a top six winger coming back. Well, that's not an easy trade to make between now and the Olympic roster freeze, even, to March 6th. Who are we talking about here? And I'm not going to speculate on the connections that they made with Winnipeg and some of the younger players that are being tossed around out there, because truthfully, most of the stuff that's being speculated isn't real. But I would look at Utah as a team that most definitely is open to the idea of not making a splash, definitely adding something to build on what they've had, and to push them into that conversation and higher into the possibility of locking down a playoff spot.
Utah is part of a group of a class of newcomers to the buying circle.
I know.
There's a bunch of somebody's going to pull off something silly, aren't they? Because they haven't been here in a while, like San Jose, Utah, Anaheim, Seattle. Yeah. Heck, even Buffalo and Columbus in the East. If Lawrence Gilman and company believe that after 5 straight wins they can make the leap up 6 points to the group, but there's a lot of new guys on the block here that haven't bought in a long time. Somebody's going to do something stupid, aren't they?
Probably, yes.
One guy.
Which is what we hope for.
Only takes one.
Yeah, we need one guy. But is it going to be the buyer that does something stupid, or is it going to be the seller, right? Mm-hmm. Because, as you're framing the question, Blake, I'm thinking of Buffalo for some reason. And mostly because of the general manager, the Jarmo Kekalainen, was with the Columbus Blue Jackets. There was a guy who wasn't afraid to make big, brash decisions. Now, they didn't work out well for him in Columbus, right? But he did it with the intent to almost take that all-in sort of approach. And it didn't pan out for him during his days in Columbus. But, what do you do in Buffalo? That team is humming right now. That's a good team. Right. So you've got Alex Tuch, and it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of negotiating and extension activity around him. Now that can change with a phone call. And I do believe that we're going to see more of that too, between the freeze being lifted and then March 6th. Right. It's not always just about trades. Buffalo's got to either lock down Alex Tuch or just use him as an own rental, because doesn't seem like there's any way that they're going to trade that piece. If they trade that piece, then that fits into the category of doing something borderline dumb. And I don't think Buffalo and Yarmo are going to do that. But there's an appetite for some teams out there to get fairly dramatic. So let's see if it plays out that way.
On the weekend, we wondered if the Canucks with a win, could put the nail in the coffin for the Toronto Maple Leafs. In the end, the Leafs get 2 points out of the Canucks here in Vancouver. And it certainly feels, and I was chatting with some people on Twitter about it, and they're like, oh, no, they're done. They know they're done.
Yeah.
And they should know in their heart of hearts that they're probably done because of all the teams that are around them.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they are 2 points back of the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Washington Capitals, who probably don't think they're done. So,
right.
Does Brad Treliving think that he's done? Do you think they know that they're out?
He probably thinks that. He's not going to say it publicly. Yeah. And I don't think that his actions are going to support that either. Not yet. I think that they feel like they just need to get to the Olympic break. They do. And that includes games in Calgary and Edmonton, neither of which are going to be easy. I mean, the one thing that, look, we can all read the standings day by day. How much change has there been in the standings? Really not a lot. From the beginning of the year to where we're at now.
Buffalo, and that's about it. Yeah.
That's about it. So, when you look at the collection of teams that the Maple Leafs are going to have to climb over and then bump out, who is dropping out of that? Is it Boston? Probably not. Like, and I guess if I were management or in management of the Toronto Maple Leafs, I'd be looking at my reality, and that is the cupboard is bare. It's bare. They've got 2 young prospects coming. Easton Cowan's playing in the NHL. Ben Danford is a defenseman playing in the Ontario Hockey League. Now, the upside on Ben Danford, I'm told, is he could be a top 4 NHL defenseman with potentially limited offensive side. So, you've got Bobby McMahon, unrestricted free agent, who's closing in on another 20-year campaign, 20-goal campaign. He's a $5 million player, $4.5 to $5 million. So can they commit to doing that? They don't have a first round, and depending on what happens, imagine if that pick protection comes into play with the Boston Bruins. Right. And then that pick slides. So then Toronto doesn't have a pick in first round pick in 27 or 28. If you can get a first round pick for Bobby McMahon and maybe something else, I'd be looking at that. For sure I would. Scott Laughton, Scott Lawton's a good player. He's a heck of a penalty killer. He's an unbelievable face-off guy. If he's in your bottom 6 and you're a Stanley Cup contender, I think you're in pretty good shape up the middle of the ice. So they have assets that they're probably going to sell. They just don't want to tell us yet that that's what they're doing. But Treliving's having those conversations.
I'm curious if Bill Zito has a rabbit that he can pull out of the hat. It's getting a little murky down in Florida now. Yeah. And obviously back-to-back Stanley Cup wins, 3 straight trips to the final. Yeah. I mean, they've been one of the best teams of the post-pandemic era. We know all of that. But they're running out of runway just to make the playoffs. Maybe this comes full circle back to Artemi Panarin. Who knows? But do you think Florida is going to be heard from before all is said and done here?
I do, because that's just the gunslinger that Billy Zito is. We've seen this from him. We've seen it from others. Julien Brisebois in Tampa Bay, Billy Guerin we talked about earlier, Jim Nill, the Dallas Stars. Like, those are the teams that do something of substance to better their chances. And man, they've got winning in their veins, the Florida Panthers as an organization. So in some way, shape, or form, the general manager is going to step in and he's going to bring in some help. I was told by a source there that I trust that Artemi Panarin is not a fit. They either can't make it work cap-wise, or can't make it work moving forward cap-wise, or just don't necessarily feel like, he's the piece that they need. But I would never, until that bell rings 3:00 Eastern on March 6th, we will be circling around Bill Zito and the Florida Panthers, or they just flat out drop out of it. And I don't think that any of us expect that. I mean, they've had just a crazy amount of injuries to top guys all season long, and it continues now with some bigger players. But I still think, unless mathematically they just recognize it's not worth it, Billy Zito for me will be a buyer.
A credit to the Nashville Predators for being 2 games above 500 because, 10, 15 games into the season, I thought they might be at the bottom of the league. So 56 points in 54 games, not too shabby, but that doesn't play into it for Barry Trotz. Give us the lowdown on what you know about Trotz's decision to step down.
Yeah, it's been a tough go for Barry, to be fair, and I don't know how much he'll get into this, so I do want to respect the man's privacy. I believe it's health related and family related. His own health, and probably wants to look after whatever the issues are that he's dealing with, and then on top of that, spend more time around his family. I mean, we'll all get to that place. And I always wonder, and I kind of chuckle to myself when I wonder this. I mean, for all the management types, the coaches who just stay in it, into their 60s and some into their 70s, I'm like, I don't get it. I don't, the money
Enjoy
isn't
life.
a factor anymore.
Yeah.
Just get out there and play golf and hang out with your grandkids, for heaven's sake. What are you stressing and losing years of your life worrying about this stuff for? So that's my sense as to where Barry is. The timing is curious. And we had heard some rumblings around this in the offseason, to be honest. And then it didn't happen in Nashville. So Barry felt comfortable at that point, continuing to push. But it does sound like he's going to continue to run things until a replacement is brought in, whenever, they go through that process. But, my understanding is that this is a full-scale search, because if you're hiring today, who are you hiring? Rob Blake is really the only guy who's available right now. Otherwise, if you're trying to get to management types who are employed, that gets a little spicy because they know so much about the team that they're working with right now. Right. And most of the owners involved in that process don't necessarily want their guys to leave in season or before the trade deadline. But it does sound like Nashville is going to go down that road and do a proper search.
One last Canuck question here.
Yeah.
Fans and media have had some Adam Foote issues. Deployment, is he the guy to shepherd this? Now, the fans that want the top draft pick, they're saying leave him in, let him cook, let him get to 32nd with a bullet. Yeah. What do you think Canucks management thinks about how Adam Foote is guiding the ship right now?
Well, they're very supportive right now, and as you would expect, Foote is in constant conversation with both Patrick Galvin and Jamie Rutherford, day by day for sure, and probably a number of times over the course of the day. So any concerns a management would have with, his handling of one player versus another, that would be dealt with and talked about internally, right? I can tell you that as far as management standpoint is right now, there's no interest in removing Adam Foote as head coach. There isn't. I mean, that's media fodder for conversation. I think everybody can understand it, just given where Vancouver is, and the fact that they've got good young players in the lineup, and you want to make sure that the development style of these players is respected and embraced. So as I will go this far with Foote and his future in Vancouver, no different than anyone else inside hockey operations. Undoubtedly, there will be a review at the end of the year, but they would do that as normal practice, as part of the exit process of a disappointing year in the direction that they're going. But I was flat out told there's no contemplating on getting rid of Adam Foote at this point.
The next time you're covering a Board of Governors meeting in South Florida, what are the chances you will be in a John Cooper-like outfit for your SportsCenter hit? Is there any chance
it happen,
you got to
Dregs.
button down a few buttons? Not
Nobody would. Yeah, nobody wants to see that. So I would say less than zero. We go as far as the golf shirt or a dress shirt under the jacket, right? And occasionally we'll slip on sunglasses, just depending on the time of day shooting. Yeah, doesn't happen very often. I mean, I didn't think that I would ever see John Cooper's bare, hairy chest.
No.
But now that I have, I don't ever need to see it again. But I will say this. I do, I'm not an outdoor game guy anymore. Honestly, it's lost its luster for me. It has. It's just there's too much. But it's not about me. It's about the spectacle of the event. The community embraces it. The fans have fun with it. The players obviously like it. So I get it. I understand it. But I will give credit to Coop, his coaching staff, the Lightning, the Bruins for playing a part in what was a party. And the game didn't disappoint. It was just wacko. No. That game was bonkers. Like, I can tell, there will be meetings happening with Stephen Walkham, the head of NHL officiating, and probably hockey ops going, okay, what exactly was going on with the officiating last night, in our spectacle game here? What was that all about? So anyway,
we were saying it's less a national spectacle now, right? Like these, and even though, which is too bad, because, and I think the Odd Winter Classic could capture national attention again, but you're right. Yeah. It is serving the purpose locally at the very least. That people are showing up.
Yeah, I mean it's incredible that the technicians that put that venue together do it as masterfully as they do.
Yeah.
I mean, now granted, there's a cold snap going through Florida, which has helped immensely, right? I mean, have you guys watched some of the videos? I watched a video today. This guy's collecting iguanas that can't handle the cold, so they're not dying, but they go into a coma state. So he's picking them off the ground. That's how cold it is in Florida. So, anyway, so I marvel at that. But, I mean, it looks like just another game, the officiating included. And aside from John Cooper's hairy chest that we all saw.
Imagine if there,
and the fact they got 2 points and a goalie fight, by the way. So I guess
imagine if there was iguanas in Saskatchewan. The ground would be littered in iguanas.
And be popsicles. That's what they would be.
Yeah. Dregs, thanks for this. Appreciate it. Might check in one last time here during the Olympics and see what's cooking, but appreciate it and enjoy the week.
Thanks, Dregs.
All right, guys. You too. Thank you.